Hey guys, and welcome back to another one of my The 100 videos, and this is going to be my review for the 7th episode of the 6th season, otherwise titled Nevermind. Okay, so there were a lot of great things about this episode. I mean, it is my favorite this season so far. It is the best this season so far. It is actually my top 10 favorites of the series so far. Really good, really well acted, really well written, except once again for this one hiccup that I'm gonna be talking about at some point in this video. The other thing I want to rave about, I'm gonna be doing all of that at the end of this video, is the acting for Josephine. I mean, I am really loving the acting by Sarah Thompson for the role of Josephine. It does feel like it comes to her naturally as compared to Eliza Taylor in the role of Josephine, and that's understandable, by the way, because Eliza Taylor, on one hand, is kind of trying so hard to change from the role of Clarke into the role of Josephine, so she's trying to create this difference between the two. This one, on the other hand, is cast for the role of Josephine, so she's not really trying as hard to get there. I mean, it's a different role, it's the only role she's got, and she's pretty much got all the smarts, all the evil, less the little bit of a teenage style that Eliza Taylor kind of portrays in the role of Josephine. So yeah, I did love that about the role. I've always complained about the teenage part, because this is closer to Josephine on episode 2, you know, with the addition of the evil bit. But okay though, that's the part about Josephine. Gonna be raving more about their character, gonna be raving about the acting of Eliza Taylor for the role of Clarke over the course of this video, because these two put together, the struggle that they have with one another is kind of what made this episode the best this season. But yeah though, let's talk the raving about the acting for Clarke and the raving about the writing for this episode. Let's that one little bit of a hiccup that I'm gonna mention later. Okay, so Clarke in Josie's head, or well, she's basically in her own head. That part of Josie's mind is being referred to as Clarke's mind space. At the very beginning of the episode, Clarke is in the same room she was at the very end of last week's episode. She's seeing her memories, they're all over the wall, kind of drawn all over the wall, but they are also like a film strip of her memories, like top moments in her life. However though, these are not really the top moments as in the good and the bad, but rather the top bad ones, the ones that make her feel all the guilt, the one that leads her to giving up at some point and facing Josie, like okay, I'm gonna sacrifice myself in order for my people to live. We're gonna talk about that later as well. But okay, this episode had a lot of cameos, a lot of characters from past seasons making a return, but it also had some characters that are still around. It also had some characters that were gone that we do see in a glimpse, sort of a flashback. The first one is about seeing Lexa on the wall. She gets us a little bit of a flashback. The second one is about Maddie, seeing Maddie on the wall, touching the wall, getting a flashback of Maddie. And that's when one door opens and she walks into the next. But alright, she meets her dad in the next room. He's one returning character, one of 3. I've been talking since the beginning of the season about all the inspirations from other great series, and by the way, a lot of people have been objecting to that, but I'm not saying over here that this is basically stealing of other series. The main thing over here, or the main word, is inspiration, and that's what we get to see over here. I've been talking about all the inspirations by Lost, you know, Gabriel, that guy in the wild that we do not see. He's kind of like Jacob. But over here, there is the I died bit, the moment of realization, you know, father and daughter. The father is already dead, that's for sure. The daughter over here thinks she is dead. All of that kind of felt very Lost, you know, the final season, the finale of the series. The moment that Jack Shephard starts talking to his father, realizes that he is dead, except in that case, he was actually dead. Now that scene was quite well portrayed by both actors, but the acting for Clarke kind of got brilliant, a lot more brilliant, over scenes that followed. So you've got her realizing moments later that she is in her subconscious, that she's not really dead, she is still alive, she's kind of trapped, but still alive. I think the closest thing I could think of over here were the words that her father said moments later, like, all you got out of this room you've already gotten, which is basically the realization that she's alive. It's kind of like an escape room. Every single room there is something that you need to figure out. In the first room it was all about figuring out how these memories work, you know, the memories on the wall. And in the second room, it was all about the realization that she's not really dead, but she's rather alive and trapped in the mind of Josephine. But yeah though, the next thing was about going back into the memory room, meeting up with Allie, because that's our second returning character for this episode. And the thing about Allie is she's portrayed by Erica Serra. I really love the acting by Erica Serra, since her role as Jo on Eureka. If I were to rank the 3 cameos on this episode, the returning characters from previous seasons, I'd say Erica Serra is on top of my list, Clarke's father is at the bottom of my list, and that makes the third and final cameo the one in the middle. Gonna be talking about him in a moment. But however though, and regardless of how good that scene was, this is where I start complaining a little bit. I mean, you know, Allie claiming that it was her that caused Clarke to stay, not to die due to the memory wipe. That's where the cosmic coincidence kinda kicks in. I mean, we get Clarke, the very first person in 200 years, to be the one that breaks the rules and an excuse is created right then and there, and I don't like that kind of storytelling. I mean, it's a matter of opinion, but I really don't like it. It's a trope that a lot of series follow, you know, a lot of lead characters get to have extraordinary stuff about them in order for the story to advance in a certain way, and I just don't like that. However, though there is a positive about it, there is a pro to everything. Every cloud has got a silver lining, and the silver lining over here is if they were not to do it this way, if they weren't to keep Clarke in the back of the mind of Josephine, or, well, the mind of Clarke, they would have missed on the opportunity of giving us such a good episode. We would have missed on the opportunity of seeing the struggle between Clarke and Josephine in Clarke's mind. Now, I know that a lot of people are going to take the very first statements that Josephine said to kind of explain this, but there's nothing special about Clarke. This is not the first time it has failed. Well, let's do the math together. The flashbacks on episode 2 were 236 years ago. Now, according to the footage that the guys found on episode 5, you know, the flashbacks on episode 5, it took Gabriel 25 years to kind of get a positive result, bring Josephine back for the very first time. So that's basically 236 years, less 25 years, leaving us with 209 years. It has been done for the very first time, successfully, 209 years ago. Well, let us be honest over here. Success with something like this, something this major, for the very first time, it never means perfection. It takes a few times, it takes side effects that appear over time for it to get fixed. Now, Josephine on this episode mentions that it's been more than 200 years since a mind wipe has failed, and the thing is, we've only got 9 years where they've possibly failed, because we're left with 209 years, take the 200 out of the 209, and you're basically left with the first 9 years after the first success at bringing back Josephine, so that means that the first 9 years were probably the perfection years. So the answer is no. Logic dictates chances are that the failures that happened throughout the 9 years, the first 9 years, have got nothing to do with this failure. There are a lot of things that I love about the conversation between Clarke and Josephine. I love Clarke's determination. Every single statement does scream determination, but I do love everything that Josephine does over there, like trying to play on Clarke's emotions, you know, towards her people. You feel guilty. This is all about guilt. I'm trying to take away that guilt by saving your people. You've got how she uses this fact that's not really relevant because it's her doing, and along with her parents, they are in control, so they are never going to go through that. She is never going to go through that, but she does state that the last person that went on ice died forever, and she's speaking of Kaylee. And she is the one who actually erased the memories of both Kaylee and her family on last week's episode. I do love as well how she shows a lot of admiration for Clarke, but one other thing that I love is she was not portrayed as super smart. I mean, she's smart in her field, but as much as she looks down on Clarke as being, you know, inferior to her, she's not that smart. She goes ahead, assumes a lot. She assumes that all of Clarke's projections do hate her, and that leads her into falling into a trap set for her by Clarke. And in this case, Clarke is actually smarter because she does remember the words of her father. You know, this entire place, the mind space, is actually responding to her emotions and her thoughts, and she does use that at some point. Now, while I was counting at the very beginning of this video, I did forget about the fourth cameo, which is basically all about Maya, and Maya was part of that trap. Now, I did love the cameo by Maya, even though it was the least emotional. It is part of Clarke's guilt, but nonetheless, it is the least emotional of them all, or the least important in my opinion. So yeah, it's my least favorite, it goes at the bottom of my list, but by the way, least favorite over here doesn't mean I didn't like it. I'm just like everyone else, a sucker for cameos of characters that are long gone, and of course callbacks to previous seasons. But to run through a few things over here, we've got Octavia and Clarke. We've got Octavia telling Clarke about Bellamy, you know, the I don't think he really forgave you bit. Now, I did mention that as well on previous reviews. I think it was my review of the premiere of the season, that I thought that there was something still bottled up within Bellamy against Clarke, and that Clarke is going to feel guilt about it. And that's exactly about the projection of Octavia over here. You know, the guilt over Bellamy. But still on Clarke over here, there is the Go Float Yourself, which is a fill-in for Go F Yourself. And speaking of floating, there is the moment that she sees her father about to get floated. It's all about her guilt, still about her guilt, and all of this time until the moment that she does give in. And even though she did use Maya to her advantage, she's still feeling a lot of guilt. She's still unable to deal with that guilt, kind of get over it, and start moving forward. And that's about when she gives in. Josephine is after the key to erasing Clarke completely, the key is Raven, and after letting her guilt take over in order to save her people, in order not to feel more guilt, she decides to give up, gives Josephine the memory, and that's that. Now one of the most touching moments is when Clarke touches that book and realizes that Bellamy has given up on her. So yeah, it's both the guilt in that moment that she realizes that these people are better off without her. They can fight this without her, they can get through it without her. They did make a deal with Russell without her, and they're gonna live happily ever after without her, so why try to go back? But yeah though, Clarke's living in peace in that room where she met her father, you know, drawing and whatnot, doing her thing, until Monty walks in. Like, what the hell are you doing? You know, asking her if she thinks this is doing better, because giving up isn't better. Now that is a reference to the message that we heard at the end of Season 5. You know, the entire I hope we were not the problem, I hope you do better in this place and whatnot, that entire message. But it all though gets better from that point because we start getting memories of Josephine. Now the thing about Josephine, and I really like that so much because it kind of creates this conflict within the viewer, is that they did humanize her 2 times so far. Now the first of these 2 times was when her father killed her in the flashbacks on episode 2, and the second time was on this episode. That entire hidden memory, that entire flashback in the diner, with Josephine sitting right there with her friend, that boyfriend that blew his brains all over the place. It seems that Josephine and Clarke do have something in common, that feeling of guilt. Because before that point, Josephine was not planning on going on the Aegis 3 mission, but then she decided to join in after this happened. But that though was the key memory for Josephine, just like the memory with Raven was the key memory for Clarke. But however though, we did see other memories for Josephine. We did see Kaylee killing Josephine, we did see Josephine killing Isaac. That's the reason that Kaylee killed Josephine in the first place. And Isaac, by the way, was not one of the primes, but he was someone that Kaylee fell in love with. He defied the oblation, you know, the forcing of people to become hosts for the primes, and that's when she killed him. The man, Isaac, used to smuggle out the babies in order to hand them over to Gabriel, the babies with the Nightblood by the way, that's to save them from the oblation. So yeah, that's always been the objective of Gabriel. He never intended to kill these people with the Nightblood, he just intended to save them from the hands of the primes. Now I believe these 2 memories were there for 2 specific reasons. The first of these reasons is to make sure that Clarke realizes what Josephine is all about, that she's not really to be trusted, and the second one is all about leading into next week's episode, The Old Man and the Anomaly. But before we move on though to the final scene of the episode, we get to see Dioza on a magazine cover in the diner, you know, that secret memory of Josephine's, and that's basically a Boston magazine. They're still back on Earth, Josephine is still back on Earth, so that means that Dioza was well known for her crimes back on Earth. It's all about the trial of the century. But yeah though, we get to see Josephine coming in so mad trying to kill Clarke. However though, she ends up waking up, and that's when she goes to her father, tells him that she's found a way to get rid of Clarke for good, that she's still in there, but she knows how to get rid of her soon enough. But there's still the Morse code part, the best part of that scene, you know, Clarke being smart enough, Monty helping her send a message to Bellamy. She's alive, Bellamy knows it, and he's on his way to planning to save her, and he's gonna be going after Josephine. But here though is my final verdict on this episode. I'd give it a 9 out of 10, with my favorite episode of the series being a 10 out of 10. However though, the only reason I give it a 9 out of 10 is all because of that trope. You know, the plot device, plot of convenience, moving the story forward kind of trope. But one thing though that I want to add over here is that while Sarah Thompson succeeded, in my opinion, a lot more than Eliza Taylor in portraying the role of Josephine, that does not mean that Eliza Taylor fails at portraying the role, because, in my opinion, both of them have managed to make us hate the character. And hating the character over here is, by the way, the objective. You want to hate Josephine, not because she is badly portrayed or badly written, but you want to hate her because she is a bad person, she is the villain of the season, and that's how you're supposed to feel about her. But that though, having been said, my work here is done, so let me know in the comments down below what you thought of this episode. Let me know what you think is going to happen on next week's episode, how all of this is going to play out, how Bellamy is going to try to save Clarke. Let me know as well if you did like this video by dropping it a much appreciated like, subscribing to this channel, and make sure while you're at it to enable notifications in order to get updates whenever I upload a new video, publish a new community post, or start a new live stream. But until the next time that you tune in for another one of my videos, the 100 or otherwise, thank you so much for tuning into this video, and have a great day.